Yo, and we are live. Yo, this is Seth with S.E.T Comedian. We are back with another one, man. Today we're about to get into this whole depopulation matter and how it's going to affect us in the future. Man, let's get into it, man.
The population collapse is already here.
All of the globalized connections and consumptions that create the world we know, we are at the end of it.
In the US, birth rates have fallen to record lows, with under 1.6 children born per adult woman. In the UK, it's even lower at under 1.5 children.
Basically, y'all boy need to get your kids up, man. You know, first stable relationships and, you know, marriages and all that good stuff. After that, you know, just start popping out them kids. You feel me?
Not just an isolated problem for the West either. Across the world, developed countries are falling apart under the weight of their own aging populations. As fewer and fewer children are born, the millions of people entering retirement put even more pressure on the rest of the country. And it seems the West...
It is crazy because you really don't see as many big families as you used to back in the day. Like, there's a whole lot of one baby situations, whole lot of no baby situations. When back in the day, we used to be people who had 4, 5, 6, 7 kids.
Bro,
you ever seen people's family portraits, 10 plus kids, bro?
Go further back. Niggas was having like 14, 15 kids. It's just like...
And that was the norm. That wasn't like a crazy thing. Like now you would hear that and be like, damn, they was going crazy. Like, nah, back then that was what you were supposed to do.
Oh, man. Back then you thought grandpa was just risen it up.
The Western world is in for an incoming population crisis. So what happens when the population eventually collapses? And how did this situation ever get so out of control? Why are people like Elon Musk desperately panicking about the collapse of the population?
People have no idea how fast the population is going to collapse. You know, basically civilization will die with a whimper and adult diapers.
Well, let's take a peek at what lies ahead for the Western world's future when the population becomes old and countries start shrinking up. Now, lots of people might welcome the idea of a natural population decline at first. Anyone who's ever been stuck in traffic can understand why it might be nice if there were a lot less people. It seemed at one point that there were so many people, all these professors saying that there were too many people on planet Earth, that we were going to extract.
What they say, the globalists, they want to depopulate us. They want to have us eating bugs and shit. They want to take out 90% of the population and bring the IQ down to 80. It's like, yeah, starting to seem real a little bit now.
Extract all the resources from the planet. That humans were a cancer on Earth, causing the world's natural ecosystems to die.
We have lots of environmental problems that currently exist that are being made worse.
All right, why is population growth bad? Population growth is, well, not bad in itself. Population growth is bad because it makes certain problems harder to solve. Like 1, food shortages. 2, fresh water. 3, species extinction. Oh, goddamn, man, damn. Everything's blamed on us and climate change. Which, well, I ain't gonna, that's a scam, but we'll get into that later.
Worse by having lots and lots of people engaging in them.
First, we've got population. The world today has 6.8 billion people. That's headed up to about 9 billion. Now, if we do a really great job
Shout out
on
Africa.
new vaccines, healthcare, reproductive health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%.
There were people everywhere saying they don't want to have children because there's already too many humans in the world.
All this made sense when it was important for us to procreate for our survival. But now, for our survival, we have to not procreate. And we have to change and rewire our biology and our culture.
For our
But it turned out
survival, we have to not procreate. I don't hear how much of a scientifically backed answer you give me. You can't convince me that that could ever make sense.
Yeah, it's like, so what? I gotta miss out on what my ancestors got to enjoy because of what?
It's like you're trying to tell me to get to 2, I gotta add 0 plus 0. Like, bro, I'm just like, where's the... Okay, you know what? You got it.
It's like, well, nah.
Just a few years, that this was all completely nonsense.
Bro,
and instead of having the world population continue to grow at a rate we can't control, it's going to be the opposite situation, a population crash. And you see, a population decline isn't so dangerous because of the end result. It's the journey countries have to take to get there. And this journey is truly horrifying, and something that world leaders need to pay more attention to. This is a population pyramid, a chart which shows the amount of the population which makes up each age bracket.
Shit, that's not good. Yeah, that's not good.
Most of human history, pretty much every single country has looked like this. At the bottom, you have all the kids, making up a large proportion of the total people. In this chart, which shows the US in 1963, nearly 11% of the total population are 4 years old or younger. This is the baby boom generation. All the people having babies after the war and during the 1960s hippie craze. But as time goes on, some of these people die and the proportion naturally declines. The middle shows all the people at working age, and without enough people here to support the people at the beginning and ends of their lives, society starts to break down. This rough template for a healthy society has worked silently in the background for centuries. It's the natural.
All right, so 1963 pretty much was doing pretty well. So damn near majority were young, and then all the working class here was pretty much still the majority of, well, the second, I guess, best majority. And then at the top, we got all the old niggas, as it should be.
True order of things. But only now, for the first time in modern history, are we starting to see this golden rule broken on a global scale. Here's
I
what
don't like that.
That's
I didn't
not a
like
good
how that
sign.
lower half, like, well, hold on, what happened to the kids, bro? We was having kids. What happened to them?
the US looked like in 2023. Instead of a
Ooh, and the population. Damn. I ain't gonna lie. Okay, yeah, we got
large population of kids waiting to replace the adults as they go.
Oh, yeah, that's crazy. So now we just got like what? 2% of the population is now kids. So we went from 10% from 1963 to 2.8% in today's time. That's like, yeah, that's ridiculous.
Older, the opposite is actually true. Even though child mortality has fallen drastically, 50 years of falling birth rates have done their damage, and there are now far more middle-aged and
1 week, so kids are safer, but now we're birthing less of them. Like, really now, that's like
elderly people than children, which begs the question everybody is starting to wonder, what will this chart look like in another 20?
The most technologically advanced era, we're having the least amount of kids.
yeah, I don't mean
It's safer to have a kid now. Probably safer to have multiple kids now than it was 20, 30, 40 years ago. And we're having less.
can't protect all 5 of them from the tigers and lions, man.
Man. And what's the propaganda that's always pushed? Fuck them kids. Focus on your career. That shit directly ties in. At least here in the West.
20 years.
You don't see that shit over
While
there.
we
as
can
much.
pretty accurately predict the shape of that chart, the reality we're all going to be living in will be a lot more shocking. Aging populations and population
They're
decline.
pretty much saying 250. It's just gonna be mainly us out here. Oh yeah. I don't know about that. We don't want that.
Present a massive problem for societies, and we don't even need to imagine what these problems will be, as we can already see it today. This chart shows the population pyramid for South Korea today. Here, the bold
Oh, South Korea. So with 51 million people, damn, bro, we're talking about less than 2% have that is like children from 0 to 4. As you go up, it's damn near less than 10% of their population are children. Majority of their population is damn old people. I'm like, bro, the highest numbers is from 70 all the way down to like 49. Like, that's crazy.
bulge in the middle is even more pronounced, with just 3% of the population made up by babies and toddlers. Now the largest group is 50 to 54-year-olds, people who are getting closer and closer to retirement. Over the next 2 decades, the majority of the South Korean population will stop working, leaving the few children left to bear the burden for the rest of their lives. So what's actually causing this? And in the digital age, where our personal information feels more like public property, it's allowed me to see just how accessible our data is to predators and data brokers. That's why I want to tell you about our video sponsor, Aura. You see, data brokers sell your information to anyone interested, scammers, spammers, you name it. Your full name, email. As per usual, when compared to other countries, they're living on people's lives. All of this for me. And best of all, info was placed in the description. While there's a few different causes that we're going to explore, the South Korean work culture is a huge factor. There, the grind starts early and it's hard. South Korean students study the most in the world. As per usual, when compared to other countries, they follow the 996 structure, from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days of the week. Officially, it ends around 3 to 5, getting longer as the kids get older. But officially is the key word here. The academic pressures and expectations of kids are so high that just going to school isn't nearly enough. Instead of finding out what they want to do, kids are thrown into a hyper-competitive grind, which they'll be locked into until they retire. After school, most students are nearly done with studying. In fact, some are.
You know, it's crazy. Like, it's funny though. Like, Japan, like, it's funny that their cartoons kind of joke about that. Like, you know, we've all watched one of those shows where pretty much a person goes from school all the way to corporation, and then they just spent the whole time just being, I ain't gonna lie, led their entire lives or instructed their entire lives.
Yeah, like a pipeline, really.
Man, and I ain't gonna lie, Japan got one of the best ones.
aren't even halfway through the day. Instead, their next destination is called Hagwon, otherwise known as a cram school. Here, students attend private sessions where they go over what they just studied and memorize as much of it as possible. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry in the country, with nearly 80% of kids in attendance. There are 24,000 of them in the capital Seoul, 3 times the number of convenience stores. Low-income families desperate to get out of the grind stake all their savings on their kids, and on average end up paying more in school fees than on food. But with everyone else doing the same thing, their odds of success are slim to none.
God damn, you tell me you spending more on your child's education than food for yourself?
That shit's crazy.
You send your kid all the way out of town and everything banked on them, like, you gotta become doctor, lawyer, or we're fucked. It's like, dang, that type of pressure on the kid? Woo. Woo, man. And you thought you had pressure.
Kids leave the Hagwon late in the evening, and in some cases as late as 11 p.m. All of this is just to prepare the kids for the national exam, where all of the students looking to snag the limited spots at university compete for the privilege. It's a make or break moment for these kids and their families. Their whole life up until this point is leading up to this. Success can mean the start of a high-paying career and the illusion of escape from the drudgery. Failure leads to shame, family rejection, regret, and the crushing feeling that you've wasted your family's hopes and dreams, that you have zero future ever ahead of you. It's not hard to see that this system is clearly dystopian and horrible. It's one of the most depressing ways to live your childhood.
I ain't gonna lie, it's damn near like Marxism being practiced. Like, yeah, we're only gonna keep the elites. Pretty much only the high IQ is gonna make it out. And if you're not, you're gonna fall to the wayside, and we're gonna make your family dump into this education system that was a scam for you anyway. You weren't gonna come up anyway in, and only the elite's gonna make it. It's like, that's quite the finesse they got going on down there.
The stress and the pressure can easily push kids over the edge. It's no surprise the South Korean teenagers are some of the unhappiest in the world. But even after their
Think about self-deletion rates.
through the education system, all they've done is take off the training wheels. The work culture and what it demands of people in South Korea is even worse. Just like in school, the hours are long and drawn out. Despite the country's supposed 52-hour cap on working hours, people regularly report working much longer shifts, often 12 hours a day with extra work on the weekends. It's the worst for people working towards the top or at the bottom. If you're a high-powered office worker or you're working for a large company, things are going to get competitive. Part of the purpose of the insane grind for the exam is to pick out and indoctrinate the kids who can maintain these inhuman levels of work.
한국에서 거의 가장 큰 시험으로 생각되는데 그 이유는 이제 앞으로 대학이라는 큰 관문을 거치기 위해서 수능을 보고 그 성적에 따라 대학을 지원하는 시스템이기 때문에 많은 사람들이 중요하게 생각하는.
Yeah, I think I was explaining that one time to somebody. It's like, bro, people be testing in just to get into like middle school sometimes. Like, you're being tested to get into a prestigious middle school, prestigious high school, then a prestigious college all your life.
Yep.
And then if you fall to one of the lower ones, then you gotta work 10 times harder just to get into another, like, just to rise yourself to prestige.
And there's social pressures, there's pressures within your family, personal pressures that you put on yourself, because in your society, if you don't go to these prestigious schools or make it to that top level, then you're viewed as a failure.
Yeah, that's how it be.
시험 중에 하나입니다.
평균적으로 고3이 된 후 하루에 몇 시간씩 공부를 하셨나요?
평균적으로 고3이 된 후에는 거의 8시간씩 공부를 해야 이제 정시 성적이 잘 나올 수 있는데요. 저 같은 경우는 8시간에서 좀 덜 공부했던.
The competition and the hours that people get used to at the cram schools carries over to the workplace. It still hasn't been enough though. In 2023, the South Korean government even considered raising the cap from 52 hours to 69 every week. Ironically, the measure...
Can you imagine having to work 69 hours minimum? Minimum. It's like, no. You gonna make this money if you like it or not. Boy, some of us gotta work up the dedication for that.
12s, my nigga.
God,
6 12-hour shifts.
Like, right, after that, you're done. You're done.
was proposed in part to double down on the crisis that they're currently facing with fertility rates. Because they didn't have enough workers, companies wanted to work the ones they did have extra hard. It was only beaten back by a massive response from young people already sick of this toxic culture. At the bottom of the ladder though, it's even worse. Rather than working highly demanding jobs on a psychological level, so-called unskilled workers in Korea have to sacrifice their physical health as well. Now, we've all heard the horror stories about Amazon, like workers relieving themselves in bottles because they don't have enough time for anything else.
Amazon drivers now suing the retail giant, claiming they're forced to urinate in water bottles.
Nobody forced them to urinate in no water bottles, bro. I've worked at Amazon, and they do not work you that hard. I'm not even gonna say
No, Key. We kind of walked in there like New Day shit. Like, gee, like when Amazon first came here, bro, niggas was sleeping in factories, bro. Niggas was complaining that their production was a little bit too high. Like, niggas was talking about, bro, there's no way I can even step out for like a bathroom break and meet these numbers. So I'm be real with you now. Amazon kind of, when we stepped in there, I believe they kind of just now lowered down their shit to where they can't overwork you. But I ain't gonna lie, they was getting away with some wild shit. But they was paying money, and they was kind of playing on people's need for money to, you know, make them work these hours.
To run the business is crazy. All right, well, I apologize.
In order to keep up with the delivery schedule that the company sets.
That's what's going on in the West, where labor laws and culture are admittedly much better. Korea, on the other hand, has some of the worst. Everybody gets worked to the bone. Some workers have gotten used to the white patches they get on their uniforms after a long day. Hours and hours of running for deliveries or moving boxes in the warehouse takes its toll, and eventually, soul deposits build up from their bodies, getting pushed to the brink. I mean, according to official figures, 500 die each year from overworking in South Korea, as their bodies simply give up under the pressure of survival. The real number, though, is likely to be much higher. Truly understanding the effects of population collapse is hard for people today. We're so disconnected from what effects this has, and our society has changed so much since the last time this happened that it's impossible for society to remember. At first, you might think that we've seen similar things in the early 20th century. The combination of 2 world wars along with the Spanish flu, which disproportionately affected the young and healthy, decimated the young populations of Europe. After the crisis had ended, countries were deprived of millions of sons and daughters. In the short term, the consequences of this were brutal. Even after the war ended, millions more would perish from famine and disease. But because over the next few decades, more kids were being born than being lost, Western countries recovered relatively quickly from the change in demographics. Instead, you have to go all the way back to the 1300s and the Black Death to see a time where the population truly shrank. Now, the estimates vary, but it's generally agreed that around 50 million people died over the course of a couple of decades. Almost half of those deaths happened in Europe, with the population being cut by around a third in total. With so much of a time gap, we look back and see the effects of the plague on the next 100 years generally positive. The depletion of the working population meant that the demand for labor went up, workers had better bargaining position, and over time, practices like serfdom disappeared in West.
Oh, dang. So pretty much the whole depopulation kind of worked out for the niggas who stayed alive, pretty much. It's like, yeah, well, if you stayed alive after, you know, the plague that wiped out half of us, then guess what? You can now charge damn near whatever you want for doing basic labor now.
Yeah, no,
because
facts.
there ain't enough of us. I get it.
In Europe, whilst living standards rose, peasants had more money and food because there was less competition. But that was only after 100 years. Looking at the end result fails to see the harrowing journey it took to get there. Entire towns and villages were abandoned, sometimes forever. Food shortages and famine were rampant because of the lack of workers, whilst the governments at the time cracked down on the survivors, squeezing them for everything they had. A tree will grow stronger after it's pruned, but it will be barren and fruitless for a long time before that happens. Today we might not be facing the horrifying trials that our ancestors faced. We can cure most plagues eventually, and we don't need 90% of the population working in the fields to survive. But in many ways the results will be the same. We may not face a crisis of mass death, but we are facing one where those people will never be born in the first place. It's now being predicted over 20 developed nations will see their populations half before the year 2100. The overall historical effects of this will be
20?
Yeah.
Half?
Yeah, bro, we not have enough kids, like mainly in the Western countries, but there is some, like you said, you know, the Asian countries kind of effing up over there on the east side.
So in the next 75 years, bro, there's gonna be 20 countries. There are 20 countries that see their population halved.
Yeah. Hey, bro. Hey, they're about to reach 10 billion. They don't think we got enough. So, hey, you see what measures they're taking. Hey, it's crazy what they doing, but they doing it.
Be the same as with the plague. Sure, our grandchildren or even our great-grandchildren might enjoy the benefits, but unluckily for us, we're going to have to deal with the immediate fallout of demographic collapse. It means we'll likely see governments try to squeeze all the work they can out of their people to deal with the scarcity.
Facing a shrinking working.
Because think about it, yeah, bro. If there's not enough working people, who's to say they're not going to start mandating people? Okay, I ain't going to lie. You got to be mandated to now work in these factories now because, yeah, we need the logistics to stay going now. And now we don't got a population to where people are just walking in there in high numbers. So now that we don't got that no more, we need a mandate for every citizen to work at least 4 or 5 hours in a factory, no pay on top of what you work already. Yep. I could see it.
Talk about dystopian.
Yeah, I could see it.
working age population pretty imminently. So I think that's something that we need to be worried about. Our working age population has been stagnant for a while. Births in the U.S. have been falling persistently and precipitously since 2007, and I don't see any reason to think they're going to turn around.
Corporations and governments will push for Korean-style working conditions and hours if they think they can get away with it. It's something huge amounts of the population will have to fight back against to prevent it. All of these awful practices are relics of a bygone system.
Another way to do that is just inflation. Just make the value of the dollar go down, so you have to work more hours to combat the rising cost of goods. They ain't even got to mandate more hours. Your 40 hours are just worth less.
Yeah, that's true. But that's if we have a population. Man, we don't got no population, man. No matter how bad you make inflation, bro, you just ain't gonna have the workforce for it. Actually, you making inflation worse on a dying population. Oh yeah, I ain't gonna lie. That's just gonna probably drive us even closer to that, dystopian future that I'm talking about.
Nah, facts.
Well, you never know. You never know what they're gonna be on next.
And that's falling apart in South Korea.
Just start popping them on.
Oh God, man. Hey, I be saying I want 10 for a reason.
Back in the economic boom a few decades ago, there was an unwritten contract between workers and the company that employed them. If they gave it their all and were loyal to the company, they'd be guaranteed a decent wage, benefits, and enough to support their family.
Only 10? You're not doing anything, my nigga.
Today, this isn't true.
10 is gonna have another 10, and that's 20 under me, and then they gonna do that, and then, bro, eventually I'm gonna have 100 descendants on some raw shit.
I stop at 10, Sean. The number can go past 10. Why stop just there?
You know what, right, man? Fuck it, bro. We can go to like 20, bro, man. Bro, let's go, bro. 20. Now after that, bro, I'm gonna start getting bored and start naming after my favorite cartoon character.
I'm weak.
Like, you feel me?
Courage.
Go. Hell nah. What was that old Dan Cook episode? I'm starting naming him Megatron, Optimus.
Oh, hell no.
The contract has been broken by firings and extreme expectations. Today's young Koreans jump from job to job just like the rest of the world has been forced to. But the other side of it, the overworking and the pressure still remains, just without any of the benefits. And doesn't that sound all too familiar to what the West is starting to deal with? With how work culture has been progressing in the West over the past few decades, we're getting closer and closer to a South Korean model. As the same problem of low fertility rates hits our society, the labor pool will only decrease. It will put exactly the same pressures on companies, which will turn the screws even more on their own employees. All of this decimates the fertility rate. People just can't afford to have children under these conditions. They can't afford the time, as people are giving all of their time to work instead, leaving nothing for themselves or for having children. And in developed countries today, women have nearly the same expectation to get into the rat race.
I feel like it'd be easier to go through the rat race. At least you're doing it for the kids. It's like, it's a self-sacrifice that'd probably help out with it. But you telling me, though, you ain't got no kids, you ain't got nobody else you doing this for, just you and your bills. Yeah, I can see where you just be a little miserable.
You wouldn't even want kids at that point. Your outlook you wouldn't even have no type of
positive outlook on
it. To want to bring kids into the world. That's like that. That's what a lot of people say. I don't want to bring kids into this fucked up ass world.
Bro, the world's dying, it's climate change, and man, I ain't gonna lie, bro, like, man, it ain't that bad.
But I mean, when you think of the culture and the hours and just how the workplace has infiltrated your personal time, your family time, I can't blame some people for thinking like that.
Yeah, but nah, that's too pessimistic for me. It's like, so you're telling me you have this pessimistic view, so you can come up with the excuse on why you cannot have kids? Man, I ain't trying to hear that shit. I ain't gonna lie.
As men. It's the same in South Korea, which has seen multiple movements pushing for equality in the workplace. And whilst there's obviously a change that needed to take place, it's had some devastating consequences. Salaries changed over time, until today where 2 incomes are required for buying a house or building a family. Now that women are expected to hold down a job as well, there's nobody left to bring up the kids. While they gain the ability to work, most women lost the choice to stay at home as well, as it's just not economically viable anymore. Then there's the actual financial cost, which with Korea's education system is even more expensive than the rest of the world. Whole classes now can't responsibly have children without putting their financial safety in jeopardy.
Hey, you know what's crazy? So pretty much putting all the work on the men actually worked out really well for the women?
Imagine that.
Huh. Crazy. Y'all wanted to work so bad. Huh.
They added y'all to the job market.
Yeah.
Or the workforce and was able to pay us all a little bit less.
Yeah.
But women's rights, right?
Yeah. Women's rights. Yeah.
Feminism, right?
Yeah. Feminism means, lowering the value of the workforce. But
go
feminism.
Us. Go us.
Yay. Female equality.
But potentially the most important factor is that people just don't want to bring children into a society like this. Even if they could afford it, as things are now, they'd be doing
because I've dead ass heard people say that, like, want some real shit. Like, oh, this world is so fucked up. You know we're going to be headed. Look at all the shit that's going on. I don't want to bring kids into this world.
I heard the climate change excuse way too many times. Where it really do make me just be like, come on now, bro. Come on. Our ancestors didn't even know if the world was going to be in the next 10 years. You're complaining about, the world is so fucked up. It's like, when war was happening? Niggas didn't even know if they were going to have an America and still having kids. You complaining about climate change is crazy.
Yeah, that's facts. Niggas that come home from being out at war, have like a 3-month break, they popping out goddamn as many babies as they could.
Bruh.
If you could plan to have twins, niggas was doing it.
Man. You want to complain about climate change?
Nah, for real.
It's like, you're soft.
A child to a lifetime of hard work for little to no benefit. An awful side effect of this is that as these middle-aged adults enter retirement, they will have been robbed of the kids they need to take care of them. It also has massive effects on young people, changing their behavior to the detriment of wider society. As the aging population increases, it sucks young people out of the countryside and into the massive megacities. In search of freedom, a high-paying job, or just because all of their friends have already left, young people around the world have led an exodus out of the countryside and into the cities. It's a problem that gets worse and worse over time. As the villages and towns get older and older, there isn't any reason to keep up the infrastructure or facilities that young people need. What's the point of keeping a school or a college open if there aren't any young people left? Eventually, as the last people left begin to...
bro, they're gonna shut down all the schools and open up all the factories. Oh God, they gonna bring all our asses in there. Why? Because we gotta keep the logistics up.
Die off or move away, the towns are left as depopulated ruins. While this is happening both in the West and in Asia, it's most prominent in China. Hotowan is just one of the many cases of ghost towns and villages in China.
Whoa.
Perched atop misty cliffs overlooking a stormy sea is a ghost town that's been overrun by nature. This is Hotowan.
Why is China known for these ghost towns? Like, they'll develop and build these ghost towns and nobody lives in them. I heard it's like a real estate scam. I've heard it's like a population thing.
It's to get funding from the World Bank to claim these false properties and all that so they can get the building and, the building funding. And not spend it on, the actual building funding. Actually, they have, here's how crazy they is about, doing this. They low-key make clay buildings. Buildings that could collapse while you're in them while you sleep. Yeah, they don't care. They don't care.
A once bustling fishing village on an island off the east coast of China.
This fishing village on a small island 4 hours away from Shanghai used to have a healthy population of around 3,000 people. But migration to the city combined with an aging population has led to it being completely deserted. Today, it's a tourist attraction, where people can go to see the overgrown houses and abandoned furniture. Hotowan's fate is the same as thousands of other towns in China and across the world. Population collapse is going to have massive effects on both cities and rural towns and villages, but not in the same way. Ironically, in the larger cities, the problem becomes overpopulation.
Everybody moved out and just gave it to nature. Like, damn. Said, fuck it. Well, nature, you got it, man. You got it.
Rather than underpopulation. As a country struggles under the weight of its elderly, the economy shrinks. Inflation and the cost of living go up, whilst pay in rural parts of a country either stay the same or go down. More and more young people are left looking for high-paying work to support themselves, with their only option being to move into the city. We can expect to see rents go up, pollution get worse, and cities to get more crowded. On the other side of the spectrum, the massive wave of people leaving the countryside only worsens the crisis. It's not just the lack of young people to begin with. They're all forced to leave their homes looking for work and opportunities. As this happens, the effects only get...
Yeah, I already know, bro. People be working like 30, 40 minutes away, trying to pull up to the job, and I'm just like, well, damn, there ain't no jobs out there, and,
and it sucks when you gotta...
to nowhere in Ohio.
Right. Or just, bro, you could say that about a lot of places in damn near any state. You be having to travel to certain cities for work, and that sucks when you already working 8, 10, 12 hours, you adding 2 hours to your commute. You know what I'm saying? Like, now you can really see how people don't be having any life outside their job.
Bro, Imagine just
that's 14 hours you got to commit to work every day.
12 hours and drive back home 45 minutes, bro.
45 minutes there and back.
Bruh, it's like, oh my goodness.
Get worse as rural communities shrink into nothing. The last people too old or stubborn to move away slowly die off, leaving whole towns and villages abandoned as we've already seen. After they're gone, they leave abandoned homes. But because of the lack of opportunities, barely anyone young wants to live there. In China today, there are currently 65 million empty homes, despite the fact that housing prices have risen over the past decades.
They got over 1 billion people though, but 65 empty homes? Bro, you know, somebody did say that China was like kind of fudging the numbers on their population to scare people. And that's but they gotta be, no, they gotta have enough people to, you know, fill these homes. They got to. There's no way China has less than 65 million people. Like, come on now. There's no way.
Increase in urban property prices and rents more than accounts for the drop in rural prices. Rural areas do have higher fertility and birth rates on average, which you'd hope might make up for this, but in practice it barely puts a dent on the internal migration of young people into the cities. This isn't the only way in which China can be seen as a warning and a glimpse into our future. One of the most obvious paths to figuring out what's going so wrong is to just look at how marriages and children come into the world to begin with. If we want to see into the West's future, we need to look again to China and their terminal marriage issues. China's been having massive population issues for decades now, but 50 years ago, they had the exact opposite issue. Their population was growing so fast that the communist government doubted whether they'd be able to keep up at all. It's why they implemented the infamous one-child policy.
Yep, and they was always known for that. That was always like some shit that we looked at over in the West. That's like, what the fuck?
Well,
but that didn't work out too well for them, and they just recently, when I say recently, I think in the last decade or so, abolished that rule.
Barring couples from having more than one child except in special circumstances. While it did have the intended effect of curbing China's explosive growth, it also had some unintended side effects that are playing havoc on China today. One of these is the brutal ratio between young men and women in China. There are now 35 million more men than women in China, making the whole dating and marriage scene far more...
God damn, bro, it's about to turn into some, like, what's the reverse of polygamy? Where, no, bro, there's gonna be
polyamory.
Yeah, man, I ain't gonna lie. It's gonna be like, what, 2 guys to 1 woman at a certain point. There's not enough. There's not enough women to go around.
Damn. Women are about to be a commodity.
Like, so you telling me while...
I gotta share my wife?
Bro. You might have
to,
bro.
Whoa.
You have to, bro. Out there in China, bro, it's not enough. Bro, because if you telling me out here, bro, we outnumber women here. If it was a turn inverse, then, Bro, unless the niggas who do got wives are having at least 10, 15 kids, and yeah, shit ain't gonna be caught up in time.
Hell no.
Competitive. This isn't the only problem. In comparison to Western democracies, China and other countries in Asia have sped run their cultural development. They've gone from highly stratified traditional society straight to the present day of Tinder and Hinge in just a few decades. Meanwhile, the West has had decades of relative freedom for people to choose their own partners before they got exposed to the apps. In China, men are still seen as being the provider. They're expected to have a car and a house and a high-paying job to offer a potential bride. Meanwhile, women are expected to get married young and stay in that marriage for the rest of their lives. It all runs completely counter to the modern world of dating.
You know divorce. Basically what they saying. There is no divorce.
Which translates into English as leftover women. Damn.
Yeah. Bro, after 27, bro, you're done for in there. Like, yeah, bro, no dude wants you. Like, you'll be lucky. Like, you're lucky if a dude picks you up in China and you're over 27. It's like, bro, it's sad, but it's the reality of the situation out there for them women. That's why some of them probably come over here for a second chance. If you 27 and Asian, you can't get
to America.
Come on over here, man. We got y'all. Don't worry.
Somebody go pick your ass up.
Trust me.
This tension has only accelerated the same issues that we see in the Western world. The traditional structure of arranged marriages that China's had for thousands of years is now fading away. And so, what's it being replaced with? We know that swiping through dating apps and commodifying love into a data system alienates whole scores of men and women. It's just not a great system for building long-lasting relationships with people, as it dehumanizes everyone on a virtual meat market. It's one of the reasons that China's marriage rate has plummeted over the past 20 years. From 2003 to 2022, the amount of marriages dropped by around half in China, from 13.5 million to 6.8. Lots of the same pressures that we saw in South Korea are also at play. Cutthroat working hours and low pay for young people means that millions just don't have the time or the money to start a family. The expectation for men to have a whole life ready and waiting is also a problem. If they just can't earn enough money to build this, then it puts them at a big disadvantage in China's materialistic dating culture. This culture of marrying for money, status, and because your family thinks it would be a good match is only going to make things worse for China over the next few decades. Despite the CCP's attempts to curb arranged marriages, the practice still has strong roots in Chinese culture, and it's not just going to disappear because Xi Jinping wants it to. And because of all the things we've already spoken about, young people are struggling to properly connect with each other on their own and build the kinds of relationships that their parents want. It's something that's best shown with an example. If you took a walk through central Shanghai and came across the People's Park, you'd see a strange sight. The walls, the lampposts, and pretty much every other surface in arm's reach are covered in advertisements. And they're not selling products or services. Instead, all of the leaflets are advertising people instead. Known as the Shanghai marriage market, thousands of parents from across the city come to the market to try and find suitors for their unmarried children. But instead of pictures or messages from the kids,
like Tinder in real life, but for your kids.
Yeah, it's like, bro,
marry my son, marry my daughter, marry my daughter. She's beautiful. How old is she? 27. Oh my God, no. I can't do it.
Like, what happened? She can't be that beautiful. She's 27.
I can't do it.
In China and single.
She's saying you, I can't do it.
Oh wow, damn, you tough.
The adverts list their education, their job titles, their height, and their age. Often the people being advertised in the park have no idea their names are even up there. And there are marriage markets like this all across China, where exactly the same thing is happening. But while they might be heading towards extinction, it's probably not for the reason you think. The market has existed for decades now. It's not anything new. But what is troubling for China is how it's going to evolve over the next 10 years or so. Online dating is a rising force in China, slowly replacing the marriage markets and other more analog methods. With over $5 billion getting funneled into the new industry in 2022, it's a massively growing sector. The government, hoping that will give their birth rate a little boost, have been uncharacteristically relaxed about their spread. As a result, new apps have sprung up everywhere, offering every single kind of matchmaking service you can think of. But the most successful...
damn, so man, you tell me you go to China, you're gonna have like 20 different dating apps to pick from, and they all bussin'. They all popping. Boy, here in America, we'll tell you right now, you probably got like 2 or 3.
Ones don't cater to finding love or picking out the right person from the crowd. Instead, they're focused on exactly the same things the Shanghai marriage market was focused on: status and wealth. One popular app called HIMMR is heavily based on the level of education that a user has achieved. Instead of your pictures or your hobbies,
submit your college graduation certificate, several high-quality photos, a self-description, and lengthy reviews from family and friends. You need fucking references? Hey, yo.
Well. I got it.
Damn, son.
You got
all right. I ain't playing around.
You will be worthy.
You gotta
of my
be
daughter.
a high value man to be on that motherfucker.
Nah, fuck it, bro. It's like, yeah, you must be worthy of my daughter.
It's this detail that's front and center on your profile. If you graduated with honors from a top school, you're going to find a lot of success. If not, you'll get a bunch of rejections. Some apps even gatekeep the people who are allowed to sign up, only letting in top graduates from the most prestigious schools. Other apps invite the parents to take a role, digitizing the marriage market as faithfully as possible. As we've seen in the West, these apps heighten and exaggerate the qualities that people usually look for in a partner. They open up the playing field to potentially millions of people, forcing their users into a global competition. The illusion of having so much choice artificially raises people's standards. Because of their embedded culture of arranged marriages and marrying for status, China is much further ahead compared to the West, but we're already catching up. We're going to see a huge rise in people explicitly dating for wealth and status. Pretty soon, just like in China today, people won't even bother to pretend they're looking for anything else. Ironically, this is going to happen in large part because of the population crisis. The economic consequences we're going to face as a result are going to squeeze even more people out of a good standard of living. With less spots at the top, the competition to climb the ladder will get even harder. You can see why millions could turn to dating and finding a well-off partner to get ahead. To understand just what an aging population can do to a country's economy, we only need to visit the last stop on our tour, Japan. Whilst China and Korea were locked in civil wars and struggling to stay afloat, an influx of Western aid combined with a fast-growing population after the Second World War turned them into a rising power decades before people thought it would be possible. By the 70s, people were saying that Japan was going to be the next world superpower. People were driving Japanese cars and using Japanese technology. Their strong economy exporting high-quality goods around the world seemed unbeatable. It was in the 80s that the country surpassed the US, Germany, and other large, very...
God damn. Yeah. man. Shout out Japan, man. They was eating at a time.
Very developed nations in its GNP per capita. Today, it's a completely different story. 1 in every 7 kids in Japan lives in poverty. People work excruciatingly long hours just to survive, and the economy has been stagnating for decades, with still no end in sight. The yen is dropping, and when the bubble burst in the early 1990s, the recession it caused is still arguably ongoing today, as the country never really recovered. At first, people blamed things like reckless money lending or other single economic factors, but their inability to recover has shown is a far more insidious long-term problem, a population crash. We know from our own experience what this economic stagnation looks like. We've been going through it for the past decade and a half. Japan has been dealing with it for more than twice that long. Depopulation has decimated the countryside, and meanwhile the cities have become more crowded and denser than ever. So what have the effects been on their culture and their people? Large parts of Japanese society, millions of men and women have entirely detached themselves from it. First, there are the hikikomori, around 1.5 million people living in almost complete isolation. Secluded in their bedrooms, they live completely solitary lives, getting their only interaction from escapism and the internet. It's a problem that's been going on for decades.
They have 1.5 million people who live their life like that, like reclusive.
And they don't even got a big population to do that shit. Like, so no, you're not working.
So they're not meeting anybody. You're not dating anybody. You're clearly not having kids. You are in isolation.
Yeah, you're not really adding to the economy as much or society. It's like, man,
damn.
Waste of
and
life,
despite attempts to solve it and draw these people out, more people isolate themselves every day. Current estimates predict that Japan could see over 10 million of its citizens becoming like this in the future.
Damn.
Even among the people who still venture into the outside world, it isn't much better. Millions of young men and women are forgoing relationships and family, instead focusing on their careers or escapism. Nearly half of all young Japanese adults today are virgins, whilst millions of others have lost all hope for their society to get better. The economic stagnation and the awful conditions are part of the reason for this, but a less measurable but more important factor is how meaning has been stripped from people's lives. Finding a partner, building a family, the bedrocks of civilization, has now been packaged into a product in Japan. They're at the forefront of offering alternatives to real human connection. First, there are the host and hostess bars, where you can pay to have someone pretend to connect with you. Or there are the cuddle cafes, which offer a sterile kind of alternative to physical connection. You can always pay for something more than just cuddles, of course. That's widespread as well. But then there's all the digital media, every kind of fantasy you can imagine. And lots you couldn't even dream of are all right there for sale. Now, none of this is unique to Japanese culture in particular. It's got nothing to do with that. Instead, the explanation for why this has happened can be found in a set of sociological experiments conducted all the way back in the 1960s. YouTuber What If I'll mentioned this before. The Mouse Utopia experiments were a set of multiple studies on rodent behavior, all carried out by a scientist called John B. Cowan. The setup was relatively simple. John constructed a set of enclosures and living spaces for mice designed to meet their every need. There was unlimited food, space for thousands of rats, and a whole world of different rooms and chambers for them to claim as their own. John expected the rats to breed as much as they could, quickly filling out the enclosure to capacity. Instead, he saw much more disturbing and strange results, which were almost the same every time he repeated the experiments. The population of the rats would never go over a third of the capacity of the enclosure, and after a few generations, it would start to fall again until all of the rats eventually died out, and it was because of their behavior. He noticed that there were different types of rats which emerged. Some of the male rats became dominant and violent, taking charge of small territories within the enclosure and monopolizing breeding rights with the female rats. Some male rats became submissive and weak. They stopped breeding altogether with the females while seeking out the dominant males for contact. Others withdrew from social contact completely. As the experiments would go on, the behavioral quirks would turn into pathologies. There was more fighting, and the female rats eventually stopped building nests or rearing their young. After a few hundred days, the colony would start losing its population and collapse because the...
Hold on, bro. So as they turn more and more towards this, they stop rearing their young. Like, yo, okay, yeah, I think we might have to go ahead and take it back just a little bit. That's
and
crazy.
rats' social behaviors do mimic ours, or mice, or mouse, whatever.
Yeah, it's scary.
And weak. They stopped breeding altogether with the females while seeking out the dominant males for contact. Others withdrew from social contact completely. As the experiments would go on, the behavioral quirks would turn into pathologies. There was more fighting, and the female rats eventually stopped building nests or rearing their young. After a few hundred days, the colony would start losing its population and collapse because the remaining rats would become too deranged to raise their children. At this point, you're probably starting to notice some similarities between the rats and our society today. Whilst our behavior can't be completely explained by animals, it does shine a light onto the dangers that we face from population collapse. Perhaps much more pressing than the economic hardship or the changes to work are these behavioral pathologies. All of these modern problems are decimating the ability and the motivation for people to create a family. And despite how much we deny it, a strong and healthy family is the bedrock and the overall purpose the society should have. Our modern society's failure to provide this will be seen in history as its great failing. If you enjoyed this video and you want to learn how to make videos like I do on this
Man, I ain't gonna lie though. That was definitely some surprising information we was learning right there. Man, what do you think, Key, man?
Nah, that's crazy, especially the last part with the experiment with the mice, because I find there's a lot of parallels. Like, pretty much the alphas was over here cucking the dudes, taking everybody bitches.
Low key. I told you, bro.
Being overly aggressive to the point where everybody was just scared of these niggas and they died out. That's wild.
Bro, I always say, like, when there's really no laws in place to keep the over aggressive, like, males in place, then yeah, it turns into, there may be an abundance of resources, but guess what? I'm taking everything, and what are you gonna do about it? And if you can't fight me for it, then too bad, because now I got the resources, now the bitches want me, and what you gonna do? Fight me? I'm gonna kill you.
That's pretty much exactly what happened, to the point where it made the less aggressive males like reclusive. They were just staying in their own spots. The girls were scared. They stopped nesting. Like, that's crazy as hell.
Bro, so you told me it would just
and there was more than enough space for them to triple in population size, he said.
More than enough. And you pretty much, there'll just be dudes, some mice will just run off to the side and just live in their little corner. Like, that's crazy. I ain't gonna lie, that was all.
Yeah, that's wild. Interesting. I liked that. I enjoyed that. Crazy video though.
But all right though, don't worry, man. We'll be back for a late night live, man. We appreciate the love and support. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel, man. We appreciate